Hey everyone, welcome back to the Daily English Podcast, the place where you don't just learn English, you learn how to use it in real life.
Hi everyone, I'm Lauren, and I'll be sharing my experience as someone who is improving their English step by step, including the challenges I faced and what actually helped me.
And I'm Michael. I'm an English teacher, and my goal is to help you speak English more naturally and confidently.
And before we start, don't forget to subscribe, because we share real conversations and practical English tips every day.
So if you understand English, but you feel like your speaking sounds unnatural,
Then this video is for you, because I've felt exactly the same way.
and today we're going to break it down step by step.
How to speak naturally in English. I think this is something many learners struggle with. Even if they know grammar and vocabulary, their English still doesn't sound natural. Why does that happen?
That's a great question. The main reason is overthinking. People try to build perfect sentences in their head.
Yes, I've experienced that a lot. I try to make everything correct, and then I speak very slowly. Or sometimes I don't speak at all.
Well said, Lauren. When you focus too much on being correct, you lose your natural flow.
So natural speaking is not about perfection, right?
I couldn't agree more. Natural speaking is about simplicity and speed, not perfect grammar.
So where should we start? What's the first step to sounding more natural?
That's a great point to start with. You need to simplify how you think. Don't try to build long sentences in your mind.
That makes sense. I feel like long sentences make me hesitate.
You're absolutely right. When your sentence becomes too long, your brain slows down.
So shorter sentences are better.
Absolutely. Short sentences are faster, and they sound more natural in real conversations.
That really changes how I think about speaking. Because before, I always believed that longer sentences sound more advanced. But now I realize they just make me slower. Have you seen this with other learners as well?
Yes, very often. Many learners think that using long and complex sentences will make them sound more fluid, but in reality, it creates hesitation. Let me ask you something. When you try to say a long sentence, what usually happens?
I usually stop in the middle, or I start thinking too much about the grammar, and then I lose my confidence.
That makes a lot of sense. And that's exactly why shorter sentences work better. They help you stay in the conversation instead of stopping and thinking too much.
So it's not about sounding smart, it's about staying natural and comfortable while speaking, right?
I couldn't agree more. Natural speaking is about flow, not complexity. When you keep your sentences simple, your brain can respond faster and your conversation feels more natural.
I think that's something many people forget. They focus too much on how they sound instead of focusing on communication.
That's a great point. Communication is always more important than perfection. Let me ask you, when you talk to someone, do you care more about perfect grammar or understanding the message?
Definitely the message. If I understand the person, I don't really notice small mistakes.
Exactly. And it's the same for everyone. So when you speak, you don't need to be perfect, you just need to be clear.
That actually makes speaking feel less stressful, because I don't have to worry about every single word anymore.
That's the idea. Less pressure creates better performance. And when you feel relaxed, your brain works more efficiently.
So this is not just about language. It's also about mindset.
Absolutely. The way you think affects how you speak. And once you change your mindset, your speaking starts to improve naturally.
That's really interesting because I've noticed that when I feel more relaxed, my English sounds better without trying too hard. So mindset really changes everything, right?
That's a great observation, Lauren. When you feel relaxed, your brain works faster and more naturally. But when you feel stressed, your brain tries to control everything and that slows you down.
That makes a lot of sense. I think many people feel pressure when they speak, especially when they're afraid of making mistakes.
You're absolutely right. And that pressure creates hesitation. Let me ask you something. When you hesitate, what happens to your speech?
I lose my flow and I start thinking too much again.
Exactly. And that's what we want to avoid. Natural speaking is not about control. It's about flow and confidence.
So how can someone reduce that pressure while speaking?
That's a very important question. One simple way is to change your goal. Instead of thinking, I need to speak perfectly, think, I just need to communicate.
That's a powerful shift. It feels much lighter and more realistic.
I like how you said that. When your goal becomes communication, your brain relaxes and your speech becomes more natural.
I think this also helps with confidence because you don't judge yourself as much.
That's a great point. Less judgment means more freedom to speak.
So if someone feels stuck right now, what's the first thing they should change?
Start by simplifying your thoughts and allow yourself to speak without overthinking. Even if it's not perfect, it's still progress.
That actually feels encouraging. It makes speaking feel possible, not scary.
And that's exactly what we want. Once speaking feels possible, you start doing it more often, and that's when real improvement begins.
I think a real example would help a lot here because when people see how it works in a situation, it becomes much clearer. Can we try something simple?
That's a great idea. Let's take a very common situation, something everyone experiences, like talking about your day.
Okay, normally I would try to say something like, I had a very busy day and I didn't have enough time to finish everything.
That's a good sentence, but in real-time speaking, it can feel heavy and slow. So let's simplify it.
All right, how would you say it in a more natural way?
You can say, busy day, no time, didn't finish everything.
That feels much easier, and I don't have to think too much before speaking.
That's exactly the point. When your brain doesn't feel pressure, it responds faster.
So over time, will these short ideas turn into full sentences naturally?
Yes, and that's an important part of the process. You don't need to force full sentences at the beginning. Your brain will connect the ideas automatically with practice.
That actually takes a lot of pressure off, because I always thought I had to speak in full sentences to sound good.
That's a common belief. But natural speaking develops step by step. First clarity, then flow, then structure.
I like that order. It feels more realistic and less stressful.
That's a great way to see it. And once you build that flow, your confidence starts to grow as well.
So confidence comes after action, not before.
I couldn't agree more, Lauren. You build confidence by speaking, not by waiting to feel ready.
That's really important because many people are waiting for the perfect moment.
Yes, and that moment never comes. Progress starts when you start speaking.
So if someone is watching this right now and they feel stuck, what would you say to them?
I would say start small, speak simply, and don't wait. Even one sentence is a step forward.
That's encouraging. It makes the process feel possible for everyone.
And that's the goal, to make English something you can use, not something you're afraid of.
I feel like many people understand these ideas, but they don't know how to apply them in real life. What's a simple way to practice this every day?
That's a great question because understanding is one thing, but applying it is what really creates progress. Let me ask you something. How often do you actually use English during your day?
Honestly, not that often. I usually study or watch videos, but I don't actively use it while doing normal things.
That's very common. Most learners separate learning from real life, but the key is to combine them.
So you mean using English during daily activities?
Exactly. For example, when you're doing something simple like cooking, walking, or driving, You can describe it in English in your mind.
That sounds simple, but I've never really done that consistently.
And that's where the change happens. Small habits repeated every day create strong results over time.
Can you give a clear example, Michael?
Of course. Let's say you're making breakfast. Instead of thinking in your own language, you think, make eggs, cut bread, drink coffee.
That's actually very easy, and I don't feel pressure when I think like that.
That's exactly the point. No pressure, just simple thinking. And over time, those small ideas turn into natural speech.
So this is like training your brain without even realizing it.
I couldn't agree more. You're building a habit, and habits create fluency.
I think this also helps people stay consistent because it doesn't feel like studying.
That's a great observation. When learning becomes part of your life, you don't need motivation. It becomes automatic.
So instead of waiting for a study time, you're using English all day in small moments.
Exactly. And those small moments add up and create real progress.
That actually feels very realistic. Anyone can start doing this today.
And that's what makes it powerful. Simple actions done consistently always win.
I think it would also help to talk about common mistakes. Because sometimes people try to improve, but they don't realize what they're doing wrong. What are the biggest mistakes you see?
That's a very important question. One of the biggest mistakes is trying to be perfect all the time. People think they need perfect grammar before they speak.
Yes, I've definitely done that. I used to think, if my sentence is not correct, I shouldn't say it.
That's very common. But that mindset actually slows you down. Let me ask you something. Did that approach help you speak more or less?
Definitely less. I would stay quiet most of the time because I didn't feel ready.
That makes a lot of sense. And that's exactly the problem. Waiting for perfection stops you from practicing.
So the mistake is not making errors, it's avoiding speaking.
I couldn't agree more. Avoiding speaking is a bigger mistake than making errors.
What's another common mistake, Michael?
Another big one is translating every sentence in your head. People try to think in their native language first and then convert it into English.
Yes, and that makes everything slower. I feel like I lose time just thinking.
You're absolutely right. Translation creates delay and it breaks your natural flow.
So instead of translating, we should focus on simple English thinking.
That's a great way to say it. Think directly in English, even if it's very basic at first.
Is there another mistake people should avoid?
Yes, comparing yourself to others. Many learners feel discouraged because they think others are better than them.
That's true. Sometimes I feel like I'm not improving fast enough.
That's a great point, but progress is personal. Let me ask you, are you better than you were a few months ago?
Yes, I am. When I think about it, I can speak more comfortably now.
That's what matters. Compare yourself to your past, not to others.
So if we summarize the mistakes, it's trying to be perfect, translating too much, and comparing yourself to others.
That's a great summary. And once you avoid these mistakes, your progress becomes much faster.
I think this helps people understand what to change, because sometimes knowing what not to do is just as important.
I couldn't agree more. Awareness is the first step to improvement.
So when you look at all these mistakes, you realize something important. It's not about your English level. It's about how you approach speaking.
That's a great way to put it. Once you change your approach, everything starts to feel easier and more natural.
You don't need perfect grammar. You don't need complex sentences. You just need to start speaking with what you already know.
I couldn't agree more. Fluency is not about perfection. It's about consistency and confidence.
And the more you speak, the more natural it becomes. even if it feels difficult at the beginning.
That's exactly how progress works. Small steps, repeated every day, create real results over time.
So if you're watching this right now, don't wait for the perfect moment. Just start speaking today.
Even simple words, even short sentences, it all counts.
Because every small effort is a step closer to speaking English naturally.
And once you stay consistent, you'll notice something powerful.
You're not translating anymore. You're actually thinking in English.
And that's the moment when everything changes.
If you enjoyed this conversation and you want to improve your English step by step,
Make sure to subscribe to the Daily English Podcast because we're going to keep practicing together
we'll keep things simple, practical, and real.
so you can finally speak English with confidence.
Thanks for being here with us.
And we'll see you in the next conversation.